Vikram, that was great. That episode is awesome. I always love chatting with team leads, especially team leads that understand sales and negotiation and persuasion and all the things that you and I chat about on a consistent basis about what it takes to actually build a successful business. And that's exactly what Donald does. Like, he's built a successful business. And there's been, like, for me, my biggest thing is like the lesson he learned through growing a team and then scaling a team down that actually does the same production now that it does at 9. Like, just the lessons that he has in his journey of building a really successful real estate team. I think anyone that wants to build a team, or really any agent that like should listen to this podcast, because there's so many golden nuggets that he talks about. And one other thing is that he brought up a lot of books that I think every single real estate agent should read, especially around sales and negotiation, that I think would be a really big eye opener for what it takes in order to be successful in this business. But Vic, what did you take away?
Man, dude, there was a lot. Like he's a very, you could tell that he's lived a long life in his short 38 years on this planet, because when you go through tough times and you have to actually figure things out, you have a different connection to the universe. And what I really resonated with him a lot for many reasons. One is because I've had a big team, and then I was just like, F it one day. I don't want anybody here, because everybody's it's just sucking the energy out of you. It sucks the life out of you if you don't have the right people. Just getting on that kind of a little bit more of he didn't say it, but it feels like he's got a little bit of a spiritual track in him. And he's got a love of what he does and a love of people. And so there's so many nuggets. So from how he recruits new agents, which new agents could also, or anybody, right? Like, dude, I talk to people all day long that need help in real estate. And some of these people have been in the industry 5, 6, 7, 10, 12 years, and they're still doing 5, 7, 8, 10 deals a year. And then you get these new people that are 3, 4 years in the business that are doing 30, 40, 50, 100 deals, because they just come from a different perspective. And so wherever you're at in the business, like if you're looking to add an extra 10 or 20 or 30 grand, there's a lot of knowledge here. Like I didn't even know where to start. Like I was like, I should have been taking notes on this one. It was really
Me
good.
too.
So maybe
Let's hop.
Maybe
Yeah. I think we should hop into the show. Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
You are listening to the #1 podcast in the world where we talk with real estate professionals about their wins, losses, lessons, and stories to help you win in your local market today. My name is Cody from Sheridan Street. I'm joined with Vikram Deol from the Real Estate Growth Academy. Vikram, before we introduce our guest today, who I'm super excited about, who once had a blue mohawk, and we're going to talk about that, and a pink one maybe. Vikram, how you doing, man? Like, I like the pink background. I know on the last podcast we did, I feel very good about the pink background today. It's really exciting. But how are you doing?
I'm great. We're back to back today, and my camera kept like tripping out. I was like, dude, Cody's the camera guy, and I'm like, bro, help me. You're like, I'm in another part of the world, Vic. I can't just come down the stairs like normal. And there's this funny thing called a setting on the camera.
That they have those on camera settings.
Don't you talking to me, okay? I am tech support, okay? Don't you fucking with me, okay, man? And so yeah, so we got the camera fixed, got the mics fixed, Donald's got his mic fixed, he can hear us, see us, and I'm pretty bummed, dude, because the banter that you guys had just a second ago, I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be a fun one.
This is gonna be a fun one. I'm excited for this. Donald,
let's jump in,
my man. Let's hop into it. Why don't you give us a high-level overview on how the heck you got into real estate, what you did before real estate? Give us a Spark Notes version on who you are, what you do, where you're at in the world, and why real estate.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the top version of it would be, so my background actually is classical piano. I went to school originally for classical piano because I didn't do well in school. To be that honest, I failed math class twice, which is kind of funny because later on in life, I went to school for marketing and got a math scholarship. So this shows you how much high school is useless. But I went to school for music, and I came out of that, played for a celebrity, toured a little bit, was on a reality show, came back, started my own thing called Fall of Spring. We're on Spotify and iTunes. It's like an old Paramore kind of sound. A lot of pop punk, toured all over Ontario, Quebec. And I learned at that age, the young age of 22, I think it was the time I started that band, that selling is very challenging, especially when you're trying to sell a garage band to a place that has never heard of you. You're not going to bring them any revenue. You're going to actually do nothing for them but take a time slot of people who would otherwise give them business, and in the same return, ask for food and gas money. So when you can do that and you can sell yourself into about 100 shows a year, I figured, okay, I got something going on here. Realized that the music industry is.
I think most real estate agents are doing the same thing you were doing, Donald. I think most real estate agents are showing houses, opening the fridge, stealing a couple of crackers and some sandwiches, and then they ask the buyer, "Hey, I forgot my wallet at home. Do you think you could spot me like a 50 for some gas money?"
Oh man, that's so.
And they're providing zero revenue for anybody, and you might have been providing value, but yeah, nobody knows who they are because they always hide behind their social media. Wow, you are literally describing real estate agents
to a T. And so, and the funny thing is I went through all of that, realized actually, I remember sitting there on backstage, and I was probably 24, 25 at the time, and just sitting there and be like, man, those guys are old, which is 38, which is what I am now. And being like, hearing them talk a conversation about, I'm still living in my parents' basement, man. Like, this is tough. And I was like, yeah, if that's my future, I'm out. I'm not interested. So I went back to school for marketing, and then I actually had no idea what marketing was, to be honest. I just asked a buddy of mine who was in music. I was like, I feel like I should go back to school for business. You pick what course I'm going into. I'll give you the money. You just sign me up. And that's what we did. And so Jose Batista is a phenomenal guitar player, and shout out to him for that. But went to school of marketing, graduated top of the class, and then I ended up in a sales role selling banner ads on websites and newsletters for associations. And that is probably the most soul-destroying cold calling you'll ever do in your life. So, well, I know you guys are an agency and you do have the word for people, but at the same time, I was, okay, there's a trade show, perfect. We're calling every vendor in the trade show. We're going to get gatekeepers. We're going to get yelled at. We're going to get hung up on. Get past it. You learn stuff like Jordan Belfort's straight line persuasion. You mix out some Chris Voss, never split the difference, and you just build the thickest skin you've ever heard. And it was full on Wolf of Wall Street. We were doing things in the office that should be not mentioned. And
we're curious.
Well, if you got a big deal before 12 o'clock noon, you were allowed to chug a beer. And that's the PG version of some of the things I did. But it was fantastic. From that, I got my second job doing sales and forklifts and floor scrubbers by cold calling that company. And then eventually down the line, I just realized after company after company selling IT, and I know nothing about computers. Like, if it's not a Mac, I'm not good. And I was selling IT services in Toronto, commuting an hour and a half a day, one way. And actually, funny enough, I did sleep on the Toronto streets for one night because the train shut down and I didn't get home. So that was an experience. And definitely do not envy the homeless at all, because it is tough. You can't even sleep on a park bench without getting yelled at. So anyways, realized that, okay, I've got a pregnant wife at the time. I need to change my careers. Went through interviews after interviews, didn't like anything, but I knew I could sell. Then took before, when I was in music, I renovated houses for a living and I worked in bars. So I learned a gift of the gab, as someone would talk about it in bars. And at the same time, I knew a little bit about a lot of things about a house, and taking that with the marketing and sales experience and transferred it into real estate. First year in the business in Hamilton, which is one of the most competitive markets, I think, in North America. You guys might know better. I sold 26 houses. Second year, 67. Third year, 97. And last year, I think it was 78 houses. So broke records, got awards. Yeah.
And now you're here. And now you're on the Our Agent podcast.
The number one
podcast
in the world. You got
questions?
I got questions. I got
questions. I got lots of questions. Let me start here.
Go. Yeah,
Let's rapid fire. Together.
Okay.
Early on, not everyone has the opportunity to learn sales, but I think you and I share the same type of ethos, which is why I was so excited to have you on the show today around like sales, like around like actually understanding how to communicate with people, understanding like long-term, the cold calling, doing the things like what me and Vic call the basics of just actually being a good sales pro and not a cashier. Like, cause so many real estate agents are cashiers, they're clerks, they're expecting to just sales to pop into their laps. But you had that from a really early time. Like when it comes to sales, what do you think are some of the intangibles that real estate agents are missing right now? Because there's a lot of agents that subscribe to this mentality that's like, I'm like, we even had the last episode, we talked about sphere, where it's like when we like with an agent, and then we actually dug deeper into like what their sphere actually looked like. We realized they were doing other things that they called sphere referrals, but they were doing other things. Like, what does effective sales look like to you in a real estate setting that has allowed you to consistently produce, almost 100 homes a year?
Yeah. So honestly, it's crazy. This industry sucks for picking up the phone. I don't know why agents have a problem with this thing. They think it's okay. I got into real estate so I can make my own time.
Don, they're scared of making money, bro. Like that's what. If they touch the phone, they're gonna make money, and they don't want to make money.
Well, the funny thing is, this thing right here is the portal, and a lot of people play video games, so like it's your portal of whatever game you play to accessing money. And I don't know why real estate agents do not pick this thing up. And that is the first thing it ever was. And the second thing is okay, I do know time blocking is important, and we do live in an age where your psychological self or whatever is super important. But when a client wants to go, that's your chance to make money. So when a client says, hey, I'm around on the weekends and evenings, you make yourself available and you turn your Monday mornings into the weekend. That's the probably the number one thing I do. When I'm interviewing agents for this team, first thing I do is call them, and then I actually time it. I actually love it when they don't answer. Then I time to see how long it takes them to call me back.
You leave a voice.
That would be, I think, you which?
Do you leave a voicemail for them?
I hate voicemails. I don't leave voicemails because when people leave me a voicemail, I don't check it.
So you give them an unsolicited call, and I love this. You give them an unsolicited call, and you see if they call you back.
Yeah, and that's stage one. The second stage for coming on this team is I'll ignore you, and then I want to see if you're going to follow up. That's the it's crazy. Actually, my broker record just messaged me. Oh, nothing urgent. Call me when you can. Yeah. So that's the second thing is I will call, then I'll ignore you, and if you call again, you're going for an interview. And it's crazy how many times that happens. Or even if like right now I am looking for another agent on the team, but someone will message in and say, hey, I'm interested in having coffee with you. I'll message back, I'm not really looking right now. And I want to see every chance you have in this industry is an interview. So I want to see what they're going to do with the objection.
Bro,
that's I think the basic level of sales that anyone can do. It just takes a little effort.
Dude, can I share a quick story?
Yeah, dude. I love your stories. Go ahead.
So there's this agent. Her name's Terry Foster out of Bellevue. And when I got into real estate, my ex-wife was like, "You got to join this cheap." Let's bring this all the way full circle, Cody. The first brokerage I was a part of was called Real Networks.
Yeah,
full fucking circle. And so after I outsold the broker, I was like, all right, I'm not doing short sales. I don't want to get into this, like, whatever. And there was this woman named Terry Foster. She was the number one agent. She crushed it. She sold all the waterfront. She knew everything about everything. I'd seen her around. She was older, but she was like put together, just solid. And I knew what office she was in. And I remember when I was new, like, I had a couple of trophies, you could call it, under my belt for a new agent. And I was like, yo, Donald, the same shit, bro. I reached out to her. I was like, hey, can I shadow you? She's like, yeah, sure. Call me back. Like, okay, when? She's like, just later. I was like, all right, cool. Called her back. I was like, hey, can I shadow you? And they're like, who's this? I'm like, oh, this isn't Terry? He's like, no, it's her assistant. I'm like, oh yeah, you did sound a little bit younger, but what do I know? Like, like she told me to call her back to shadow. She's like, hold on for a second. And I know, like, now I know that her assistant sat like 3 inches away from her. but she just answered all of her phone calls. It took me like 5 times. She finally was like, all right, this guy's not giving up. And she let me shadow her. And, you forget these things when as time goes on, but what you said is persistent. So like, okay, so you put people through the ringer, but you're fucking evil. I love it.
Honestly, if Josh Hewitt's watching, or if he watches this later on, shout out to him. He is an up and coming. He's his first year of real estate with us on the team, and the kid is a force to be reckoned with. He emailed us 7 times before we said, okay, come on in for an interview.
Which is funny, because that is the average amount of times that somebody needs to follow up with a prospect to get a conversation.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where, like, I had met the guy. He's a good guy. He's a great kid. And not only his grandfather was a huge name in the business. So as a team owner, why wouldn't I want to bring him on? But at the same time, I was like, he called, I would talk to my assistant. He called, talked to my assistant. And then, so finally he's like, he sends me a message. She's not picking up. It's like, just send her an email. He sends like 6 or 7 emails before it's funny because he tells the story. He's like, I sent one last email, probably kind of drunk, and thought, this is my last ditch effort. And then you said, okay, come in for an interview. And then he's like, I was so nervous. I was so scared. And then he came in and he instantly started working with leases, became like the lead lease agent on the team, and just knocked it out of the park. Now he's kind of doing leases as well as sales, and he's amazing. And that's the kind of attention you need.
Okay. I got a follow-up question real quick, Cody. You put him on leases and not right directly with buyers. Is that your step-up program? Like, you got to be able to first take leases and then buyers and then sellers. Like, is that kind of like the regiment you follow to get people's feet wet so that they don't just go out there and botch a bunch of deals? Because buyers are not as easy as people think, especially if you're brand new. There's a lot of stuff that goes in. So is that your step up? It's like, hey, learn the leases, learn the language, learn the showing, learn this. Is that kind of your model?
So I had a larger team at the time, and this was going into, it was about a year ago, like May of last year. And at that point I figured, okay, he's brand new, he's young, and leases are going to be the best way for him to segue into the market. I don't have anyone that can do leases, but based on the price point in the Hamilton, Ontario region, leases are where the market's going. Like in Toronto, most agents only do leases because it's all they can afford. In Hamilton, it's going the same way. Like, you're looking at renting half of a house in the Hamilton Mountain, you're like $2,600 a month for a 3-bedroom. So there's still money to be made there. And my thought process was, I have at that point, I think 8 or 9 agents that were barely performing, and I was trying to cleanse and clean the herd out. Now I'm down to 3, and we're doing more with 3 agents than we do with 9 in a better market, arguably. So I think for myself, it was, I don't need another person to fall into the group and do nothing. I would rather someone who can do leases prove to me, this guy wants to prove to me you can do something. So prove to me that you can. And then he did. So
I want to dig into the scale down of the team to be more lean, but produce more. So I think that a lot of agents or team leads that I speak with, like, obviously we know we're in an industry with high amount of ego. So even like trying to scale down your operations, it can feel like gut wrenching. Like, I'm even like, as an entrepreneur, I'm like scaling down my operation like that hurts, like, because it's like, it's your baby. Like, what were some of like the internal battles you went through in order to scale down the operation to 3? Like, obviously it's performing better now, but were there things that like when you were in the market, like, how were you battling? Like, do I make this decision? How do I let people go? Can you walk us through kind of like what was going through your head in the moments where you're like, I need to shed some of the weight?
Yeah. So my biggest mistake that I've ever made, and that's kind of one of the things mistakes that other people make in this business. My biggest mistake as a team lead was thinking more bodies meant more deals. Yeah. And so one of the biggest mistakes that I had to learn the hard way was that you can have, and Jim Collins says in Good to Great, you can have the wrong people on the bus and it's just going to cause a massive headache. And that's what it was. I was putting out fires. I was dealing with attitude and emotions and all these things for agents who questionably shouldn't even be in the industry, but that's for them to decide. And I'm not pointing any of them out, but They would come in looking for handouts. And my biggest thing now with when I'm interviewing agents is, look, you're getting leads, you're not getting referrals. That's the biggest thing that I started doing. But then leaning down, what I started realizing was, okay, I do genuinely care about the people on the team. Like, I wouldn't have them here if I didn't want to see them succeed. But you can't force someone to succeed if they're not willing to listen or work, right? A lot of people got in this business for the wrong reasons, I think. And that's it. And I'm sure when they hire you guys on, to think, okay, I'm going to pitch in some money to do a lead generation, and instantly I'm going to be set up with showings. All I have to be is a showing agent, open doors, make money, which is...
They don't even want to do that. They call Cody's company and they're like, they come and they bitch to me and they're like, all I want to do is write contracts. And I was like, yo, I don't even know why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
You should go work for Redfin.
Oh yeah. Or something even worse. But yeah, so what I started doing is started implementing levels of accountability. I started focusing on things that they need to do to perform. I brought in, like Sheridan Street has this fantastic opportunity where they can live transfer you calls. Well, that should be a privilege, not like if you're on a team, that should be a privilege. So what are the metrics in place that you have to do to qualify for that program, right? So if you're working with Sheridan Street and as a team owner or whatever, you should have levels of accountability in place. That way they can realize the privilege that it is, because it's not cheap, but at the same time, it's a lot more quality, right? So I started implementing programs where it's like, okay, make some phone calls. I started looking into the analytics a little bit more. I started asking the questions. How do you think you're doing? What's your pipeline look like? Asking the questions. And then what the funny thing is I don't know how, I think 2 agents that were on this team in the past 12 months, we did calling nights. And I know my cost per lead. And I know that a cost per lead to a company like Sheridan Street or whatever, if I were just to break it down to a per cost, is $5 per lead sent to the machine to send it out for a qualified buyer. So what I did was, okay, so we're doing a calling night. Actually, I've got the drawer right here. And for the Americans, it's not going to look, where's the drawer? It's going to look a little funny because it is Canadian, but we do calling nights. And when they go to the huge database that we have and they pull out any appointment or conversation, I gave them a $5 bill on the spot. A little bit of my old boiler room, Wolf of Wall Street kind of feel, but it's nice to get handed a $5 bill for having a conversation and booking an appointment on the spot, because I know that's how much money in retrospect that, and for anyone watching this who's on the fence about working with a quality company, if this is stopping you from making thousands of dollars, you should really reevaluate your situation and yourself as a business owner. But so what we do calling nights, and I handed out $5 to everybody who had a call, and I handed out $10 to the person who had the most appointments. And the 2 individuals throughout different times we made the calls, I didn't get anybody on the phone. You didn't get anybody on the phone for 3 hours. And then you go through, and a lot of these CRMs 24 hours later will notify me as the owner saying, call abandoned. So they made 200 phone calls. One of them made 200 phone calls in 3 hours. It's pretty good. Cold calling from the database, which are people who opted into our digital marketing, and hung up after the first ring just to get their call count high to say that it doesn't make sense.
Me and Vikram, before you got on this call, like, that is the perfect story where I'm like, some people are full of shit. They don't actually do the things that they say they're going to do. And I'm curious how you manage that type of person, because as a real estate team lead, like us as an agency, like we equally have to hold people accountable to filling of the trackers, to answering their phone, to all these things. But you as a team lead who's working with them on a consistent basis, like on the ground, like, how do you have a conversation with a high ego individual? Because most people, like we mentioned, have high egos. How do you have a conversation where you're like, look, like, what did that conversation go like when you're like, you hung up the phone on people, and this is costing me money. I'm the one generating leads. Like, you're now costing me money by not answering the phone. So how do you manage, like, as a team lead, how do you manage the high ego to the person that like says they're doing something, but they're not actually doing it?
Before you
Yeah,
answer that
actually,
question,
yeah, go for
answer
it.
that question, do you think it's ego, fear, or both?
As to why they're not making the calls?
Yeah, because I mean, if you're getting a ton of rejection, right? And you know, Cody and I talk about this a lot, Sharon and I talk about this a lot. I think most people have enough people in their database to do 10 to 15 deals a year. They just don't have the skills to make it happen. So
I don't be scared. It's like,
they get scared to make calls because they don't want the rejection. So do you think it's ego or fear or both, or am I totally off?
so I read a great book. It's called the Rise and Fall of the Modern, or Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. There's a lot of things people can agree with, a lot of people in this industry, in this world today, that they're not going to agree with. But one thing that I definitely appreciated was the comparison of the evolution of your own mindset. So if you think back a long time ago, you have I know it's a male, female world, whatever, but just for sake of whatever whatever pronoun you want to use, I'll just say male, man, but you can add woman if you want. So you have, if you go back far enough, you have the political man, which was the first level of society where you can gain power. So if you think back to the Roman times, the Greek times, the higher you rose in politics, the more fulfilled you became. So that's why they call it the political man. Then through the Middle Ages, you have the religious man. The higher you rose through the ranks of your religious, usually the Catholic Church, but it could be other forms of like Buddhism or whatever part of the world you're living in. The higher enlightenment or spiritual you get, the higher you get ranked as well, right? So then you go to the revolution age. Then it becomes the economical man. And that's probably where I fit in, is you think about today's society, they say things like, oh, like I don't feel fulfilled in my work. But how come our grandparents and their parents' age can work in a coal mine? That's not fulfilling in any level, but they were so fulfilled. Because in the economical man, it wasn't what the work was, but it was what they could do with the money and paycheck they got from that work to feed their family. That's where their empowerment came from. Now the empowerment comes from the psychological man. So can I see myself doing that? Do I resonate with that job? I feel like I want to be a butterfly keeper because it makes me happy. And according to HGTV, I make 80 grand a year doing it. Right. So it's that level of mindset that people don't want to get in the stalls. Like they want to play with horses. They want to work with horses, but they don't want to get in the stalls and muck out the stalls. Right. So I think that's really the problem, is when you get on the phone, to a lot of people, this looks like work, when this is supposed to be a toy to become a social media influencer, which is what most people want to do these days. And I think that's the real reason why people don't make the calls. Like I teach a class here at the team. I'm not sure if you can read that. 28 keys to controlling the real estate conversation. Change your words, change your world. Like this is something I put together through a couple of books, and it's all just like the psychology behind certain scripts and certain phrases of words you can use to control the conversation. So I don't think it's the education or fear. It might be part of fear, but I think it's just what it takes to be successful and what they want to do or willing to do might make the difference.
That's
I don't know if that answers the question.
That answers Vikram's question, but he interrupted me, and I want to know, the question is, how do you coach somebody through being lazy? Like, because I just call it lazy. Like, it's just, they just don't want to do it. But maybe it's like, maybe they're not meant to be in this profession to begin with. But like coming back to the person that made 200 calls but had no conversations, and they had no conversations because of the fact that they were scared. Maybe they just like wanted to put it in their call count. Maybe they just didn't want to do that. They didn't believe it could work. How do you coach somebody on your team? Like, cause like, it kind of sounds like you have a major league and a minor league. A lot of agents that we talk with, it's like they have a lot of team leads have a major league and a minor league. You want access to these leads, you want access to Zillow, you need to first master the basics. But how do you coach somebody through coming up from the minor league to the major leagues?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing you need to evaluate is, are they coachable? So that is the first thing that I learned. And I did some John Maxwell training. And the most important thing I ever learned was that someone could be going through something in life and they need a therapist, so what does that person need? First off, find out, every agent on the team is different. especially in today's day and age, everyone's uniquely different and they love to express that, which is fine. But I always think of where are they going? Where do they need to go? I can let them know that I'm in the trenches with them. I'll try and keep them safe within wherever path they're choosing, and then I'll paint the picture of where they should go. That's kind of the overview story in which I bring, but then I need to realize and examine, like some of these people on the team that have been on the team in the past, I thought they were coachable. They definitely weren't. They needed a therapist. They needed a mentor. I can mentor better than I can coach because I can teach, I can train. I've done a plethora of mistakes in the amount of deals I've done and seen a huge world of oh shit, let's get this fixed kind of thing. So I can definitely mentor and I can teach sales. I can train it, no problem. But coaching is a different animal. But there's a guy named Morgan Emery, which I think you guys should have on your podcast at some point. He is phenomenal at coaching, and I had the team linked up with him. And in 2022 is probably the best investment I had made because he actually got them off the, as Jim Collins would say, they got him off the bus. So he asked them the hard questions in the coaching, which as a team owner, it was always harder because I found out later on it was looked upon like, you need to do this so you can pay me. You need to do this so you can pay me. By having a third party who is not in any way influenced by their success, that unlocked a lot more possibilities. So the answer is most of them quit, but most of them quit with a plan from myself and the coach to get them off and let them see that they should get off the boat themselves.
You know, I've been where you're at with teams and in real estate as well. And so I don't know exactly what you guys go through, but when we start building teams, we think more bodies, more sales, more money. And it's sad because I from talking to you, I get a feeling that you brought people on because you wanted to see them win.
Yeah.
It takes a tremendous amount of work that people don't realize to bring somebody on, train them, spend time with them. It takes a tremendous amount of effort and emotions out of your family and your life that you pour into these people. And, you know, I like how you are so tactical now about who you bring into your world. And I think that's really powerful because a lot of people bring in the first person that says hello.
Yeah.
Like, you know, a new team leader, and I've been guilty of it. I've had to let people go, unfortunately, and you get a lot of fun things in this world of team leaders. But I've seen what you were describing earlier, where you have 9 people and 6 of them don't belong at all. 3 of them are like a maybe. And you're like, wait a minute, I got 9 people. Where's my yeses at? Like, where are the ones that I want to keep? When you bring in an outside party, right? When you bring in an outside party, because again, like Cody said, there's a lot of ego and there's a lot of fear. And I believe that ego and fear are the 2 reasons that people either do things or don't do things. Like they're either scared and they come and they say, I got to change things, or they're egotistical and it's like, oh, well, if Don's doing $1 million, I'm going to do 2. And they double down on what was working and they try to, up your game. When you brought in the coach, right? How did you find the right person for your team? Because again, a lot of team leaders are busy, they're stressed out, they don't actually know how to analyze a coach. So how did you analyze the coach?
So the way I met Morgan was actually kind of funny. I've got a really good friend, Vince, who was a CEO of a retirement villa. And because I have my seniors real estate specialist designation, that's how we kind of interact. And I threw a football party. So in September, I had bought half of the end zone, put a huge past client in there, event in there, and invited some of the networking partners. Vince had brought in Morgan. It's like, hey, he's my +1. I'm like, yeah, that's fine, cool. Talked to him, and then we just went for coffee. And I was like, all right, let's just see where it goes. I meet with people all the time, and let's just see what happens. And he was just saying, you know what, like I see your struggles. I want to invest in you. Give me a chance to invest in you. And I really liked what he had to say. So for like the way that he talked about it, the way he said that his style of coaching was, I was like, you know what? This sounds like exactly what we need, because I don't have, I have a lot of patience for clients, but with the team, I got patience there too, but I also don't really like the chitter chatter, I guess it happens as once you have a larger team. Like, cause they'll all talk to each other, and that's fine. I'd rather just like have one group of guys. I grew up and played in bands. So after 4 or 5 people, it starts to become a small orchestra, and they all chitter chatter. The flute section hates the trumpets and all that stuff. But you give me a bass player, a guitar player, maybe a lead guitarist and a drummer and a vocalist, and we're fine. So I just found that as it got bigger, I couldn't handle it. And talking with Morgan, I was like, this seems to be the puzzle. And if I can just focus on teaching, training, and doing the work myself, and I can give all this emotional baggage and BS to you, that's a win.
Do you think that you will ever try to go back to a 10, 11, 12, 15, 20 person team? Do you think that will ever be on the horizon now that you said that you're producing the volume with 3 people that you did with 9? Do you ever see, like, in the future, like as you plan out your business, that is a possibility? Or is it something internally that you now know that I'm naturally going to have a small team?
I think depending on which way the real estate market goes, would determine that answer. But I definitely like the idea of having a larger team. It's not because I need to be egocentric and think, oh, look at me, I'm in charge of these many agents. It's more the fact that I got into this business to be kind of like Hacksaw Ridge, where it's like, I just want to help one more. I just want to help one more. And so as I transition from the buyer or seller being the client to what I actually view as the agents on the team also being a client, it's a matter of, if I find the right person, I just want to help that one more agent. I just want to help that one more. And the more people that I can help, and the more people I can inspire to change and live out their dreams, then that's fine. So there's no actual cap rate at which that will be. It's just a matter of how many agents in the future will present themselves to be that quality that needs to happen.
Don, I want to say thank you more than anything. Like, this was amazing, and this was just an amazing podcast. And like, wrapping up here, if somebody were to want to reach out to you, and maybe it's an agent to agent referral, maybe somebody locally, a newer agent, wants to reach out to you and chat about, potentially joining your team, if the right fit, and you understand that you're going to have to go through a series of testing. I hope that if you do reach out, you listen to the beginning of the podcast.
Massive rejection.
Yeah. But if somebody were want to reach you, agent or somebody else in your local market, where's the best place that we can send them?
So our website's kind of getting worked on right now, just kind of doing a little switch. But you can always email me directly. So it's Donald@PorterAssoc. It's supposed to be associates, but I did not. I had to wait for someone with an accent to call me for the first time. Realize Porter Assoc. I'm like, yeah, that's what it says. .com. So, or if you're on Instagram, my social media manager will probably send it to me, because I'm not the best with social media, but she does it for me. But it's Porter Assoc, ASSOC for associates. At Porter Assoc. Sorry, but you can hit me there. Any form of medium. When you go to share this thing, feel free. You can toss my email up there. But cool. Anyone watching this, wherever you're from, if you just want to call, I'll help.
Hey man, we genuinely feel that, when I met you for the first time, I'm like, oh, we just share the same type of ethos to business, to life. And, just really appreciate your time today. And I want to say thank you for tuning into another episode of the RE Agent Podcast, the #1 real estate podcast in the world. We'll see you soon.